I have a confession to make. Coming out of the closet right now. I've done bad things to you, to all of you. It might even turn out that all your problems are because of me. I could well be the root of all evil. At least that's what Russian Orthodox Church says. Here we are living in a time when the trouble has come. The trouble has long since come from the educated, from people like Charles Darwin, from the others, various biologists, scientists, all sort of economists, Adam Smith, Duns Scotus. They've saturated the whole world with the theories that a person can live without God, that the main thing in person is the economy, it's the main thing is bodily health. Among scientists, of course, there are believers, there are even very devout believers, but in the academies of science, the Russian Academy, the World Academy of Science, I don't know, the French Academy of the Immortals, the majority are atheists. They believe in mathematics, but they don't believe in Jesus Christ. They believe, let's say, in higher mathematics, but they don't even know that the higher Christian wisdom. Therefore, if your mind refuses to bow to God, then the very best thing in you has become a source of pride and ruin. I admit, guilty as charged. I am the educated one. Graduated from Russian school with the highest honor, the medal, straight A student, 7 years of university studies at 3 universities in 2 countries, and some postgraduate courses. I am the educated one. Among millions of other educated ones, I possess critical thinking. I ask uncomfortable questions, and I am usually the pain in the neck for Russian authorities. Any authorities for that matter, because I question authority always. According to the Russian Church, I am the root of all troubles. Shall we begin this week's crazy news update? Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin, and welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian, the educated one, me. Every week, I give you crazy news update, straight out of the mad circus that Russia has unfortunately become. But first things first. There is no such absurdity that could not be realized in Russia these days. Please remember that. I hope I didn't make the grammatical mistake in this sentence. No such absurdity that could not be realized in Russia. Anyway, the news, I call them crazy news from Russia. The news of Russia that matter and that you will not find in any mainstream media, at least most of them. Some, the big ones, probably can find. And let me start with this news about the educated ones. You see, I take it personally. I don't want to let it go easily. That's a personal attack on me and on my values. You see, I disagree with Russian Church's official position. I believe that the educated ones are the force of the progress. They are making our lives better. And that God and science are not mutually exclusive. I think that science is the proof of existence of God. The more we learn of this world, the more we understand how brilliant and sophisticated it is. The more we understand that there are things that we cannot explain. Therefore, there's higher energy and higher being, God. It's easy. Now, who is this guy speaking sedition? Let's check him out. The High Priest Andrei Tkachev. He has been featured here in Crazy Russian News Updates, often for his statements. He is the one who said many things, including, the Lord is punishing us with these Ukrainian HIMARS missiles, where there is godlessness, there is pederasty. He said this to women Don't touch him. He's alive. It's not yours. What's in your womb, it's not yours. He also said, peaceful times are a real curse. Among other sayings of his, why does a woman need power? It's some kind of disease, some kind of contagion. A woman has not just a husband, she has a master and Lord. You must love him, be faithful to him, and be his servant, and not be ashamed of it. God made man the human being and woman his helper, who should follow her husband like a thread follows a needle. And by the way, these were Tkachev's quotes. I quoted him, every single one. You see, I don't forget these things easily. I kind of write them down, okay? Now, to my shame, I didn't know anything about Tkachev. I talked a lot about him, but I didn't know anything until now. I did some research, and this what has been found. Andrei Tkachev was born in Lviv, Ukraine. Surprise, surprise. At the age 15, he was admitted to Suvorovskoye военное училище, and that's a military establishment. And upon graduation, he became the student of the Military Institute of the Ministry of Defense, Russian equivalent of the West Point. And what did young Andrei study there? His major was military special propaganda, spецпропаганда. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because I learned what was taught at the faculty. Trust me, it's worth learning. I'll make an entire live stream dedicated to that in the upcoming days. Please tune in. After the university, Tkachev moved back to Lviv and joined Russian Orthodox Church. I mean, where else a young Soviet officer straight out of Russia's best military school studying special propaganda would go to work, right? Yeah, obvious. Russian Church. Wow. And this guy tells us the root of all evil is in the educated people? Wow. Ooh. The next piece of news is also about the educated people. Well, how to turn Russians into the uneducated people, really. The heavyweight senator, Parliament's long-timer Sergei Mironov, proposed to ban 6-day weeks at school and ban weekend homework. He believes that Saturdays should be free for family time, and that there are some other voices in the parliament who pose to discuss the possibility of banning homework altogether. But wait, it gets much better. Rosobornadzor, government's watchdog for schools and universities, I didn't even know that such agency exists in Russia. Well, Rosobornadzor proposed to exclude up to a third of the excess material from school curriculum. The head of the department, Anzor Musayev, noted that from 15 to 30% of the content of modern academic classes, subjects, repeat the material that was taught to university students in the USSR. And I agree with that. Modern-day school curriculum in Russia is harder than we had back in the USSR. But you know what? The world has also changed. It has become more complicated. There's so much more information. And the school education is just trying to keep up. Well, it looks like Russia is going backwards now. Back to the USSR, where things were more primitive. Is that a coincidence that Russia's high priest telling of the danger of the educated people, and the Russian senator immediately proposing to unload school children of homework, and the head of the education system watchdog proposing to kill 30% of all materials learned in school? that all happening at once is a coincidence? What do you think? Please let me know in the comments. Now, how do I feel about Russian children coming out of schools dumb as rocks? Well, the Russian church, the Russian parliament, and their parents want that? I'd say bring it on. My kids are all set. Jake, Oля, Dasha are all attending American universities. They're being educated according to the American programs. And Michael is attending an Uzbek school, being taught by Uzbek standards. He is loaded with homework. Uzbek, English, extra math, chess, and I make sure that he does all his homework. And on the weekends too, that's in between playing hockey on Saturdays and Sundays. And Russian children? Well, you know what? I have my big American popcorn right over here. Let's watch how this grand show of dumbing down unfolded. The next piece of news comes straight from the Russian Tsar. It's very alarming news. Listen to this. Vladimir Putin speaking at the summit of Russia's labor unions said that by 2028 Russia will increase production of goods, including medicines, and will be producing everything domestically. Oh. Now the Western companies are gone and nearly zilch is being produced domestically. It means that zilch will be produced in the future, as the system Putin has built is not geared at producing things. It's geared at policing the people, at oppressing the people, at taking away their rights and keeping them there. And policing is done very effectively in Russia. Not producing. That's two different things on the opposite side of the scale. You know, if I were a Russian, I'd start getting prepared for what's coming, because there will be nothing. Well, on the other hand, what can Russians do right now to prepare? My popcorn is right over here. Oh, it's good. The next piece of news comes from Putin's mouth again. And I want you to check this out. Meeting Russian senators, Putin announced that the goal of Russia is to improve the demographic situation. Now, what? What? How did it turn from denazifying and demilitarizing Ukraine to improving demographic situation? What we're seeing right now is grand manipulation of Russian people. And the worst part, Russian people are playing along, buying this stuff. No wonder they need uneducated people in Russia. How in the world he's trying to improve Russia's demographic situation by throwing over 1 million men to die in Ukraine? That's how you improve demographic situation? Let's move to another piece of news from Russian Church. Well, the Russian Orthodox Church proposed to equate responsibility for swearing to selling and using illegal drugs. Okay. Use a swear word and go to prison for 15 years. The high priest Yevgeny stated that swear words destroy Russian society no less than drugs, and stressed the importance of creating precedents for punishing misrepresentation of Russian language. Not only they suggest such legislation change, new laws that would criminalize swearing words, giving people up to 15 years in prison, they beg to lock someone up soon to create a precedent. Oh, merciful Russian church. One question. Oh, that's a question I ask myself all the time, friends. Where we Russians as the society, where and when did we turn wrong? But wait, don't leave yet. It gets even better. I know it can't, but it does. Cows are better than bitcoins. How about that? Well, at least that's what the Russian senators are saying. They're calling Russian people to buy and raise livestock instead of cryptocurrency. It sounds completely insane, I know, but this is proof right here. Um, the author of this opinion, proposition, Senator Vitaly Milonov, called on Russians to start raising livestock. He believes that all digital assets will collapse, and those who have cow will not worry because they will have milk, butter, cottage cheese, and everything will be wonderful for them. Boy, imagine thousands of cows inhabiting Russian cities. Hey, neighbor, where did you park your cow today? Oh, you know what? I had a very lucky day. It's parked not too far, right around the corner. What about your cow? It was towed, and I'm trying to get it back now. It's sometimes, friends, I try to understand how you're feeling right now, because what I'm telling you is it sounds crazy. That's why I call Russian my news updates crazy. But it's like, to me, it's the same thing. Okay, I'm sitting here looking at this news, and I am in awe. I'm thinking that this is an imaginary country, you know. Rusenstadt or Ruslandia or I don't know, through the Looking Glacier or something like that. And then it's just like Lewis Carroll came up with this country, and then the news come from that country because absolutely crazy. Well, you know what? It's actually about the cows. It's not. Well, it's kind of like a joke. I don't even know how to call it, but it has truth in it. Russian government knows of enormous crisis rising in the agriculture industry, and that means not too much food, you know. How to solve it? In any way possible. To force people own and raise livestock, chicken, cows, grow own potatoes, just like what we did in the USSR. They want Russian people to start feeding themselves. And they are slowly installing this idea in their heads. They're just doing it in different angles and in different forms. They're bombarding with Russians with this sometimes crazy and sometimes not so crazy ideas, and some deep inside their heads they're forming this subconscious idea of, you know, providing your own good is actually acceptable. It's good. Before moving to the next news, I want to thank you. Those of you who are part of Inside Russia, who watch my videos and streams regularly, thank you, friends. Thank you for liking, for watching, for giving me your precious time, for writing me, praying along with me, and sending me your love. Thank you for all coffees that you bought me at buymeacoffee.com, for PayPal, Patreon. Your support shows me that you value my work highly. Just know that it inspires and gives me energy to move forward. Demonetized by Google, it doesn't matter. I give you a promise, I will continue to keep informing the world of what's important in and about Russia. Now, I have some good news for Russian people for a change. You know, in general, Russians are not healthy. There are widespread problems with eyesight and nerve systems. Things are not good. And Russian government is very concerned, very concerned. But no worries, Russian Senator Dmitry Arefiev came up with a brilliant solution. brilliant solution. He proposed to shut the internet off on the weekends for all Russians for the entire country. What an elegant solution. An easy, effective, quick, and cheap way to restore Russian people's health. They won't have access to the internet. Their eyes will relax, they will get better, they will be calm, so their nerves will recover. I think that good Russian government needs to teach other countries of these things. They're so brilliant. They need to spread this goodness of the Russian world onto other countries. Hey, just shut off internet to your citizens, and they will get better. And, don't educate them so they won't grow the educated ones. And everything is going to be fine. Now, why don't they just spread it all over the world? Oh, they're doing it already. International Propaganda Network Russia Today. Sorry, my bad, I forgot. Okay, moving to the next news. It's also positive. Russia just announced it can produce own aircraft without any foreign help. Full cycle, bada bang, bada boom. I quote the managing director and the general designer of the United Aerospace Corporation, Alexander Nazimtsev. We are the only country in the world that can manufacture airplanes full cycle, both aircraft frame and engine. No other country can do that. Even the United States of America needs cooperation from Europe and Japan, and Russia can do that. Fantastic news for Russia. The best in the world. Again, we claim the world's superiority, comrades. Again, it's just one thing that bothers me a little bit, a tiny little thing. In 2024, Russia produced how many aircraft with or without foreign cooperation? 0. Zilch. Nada. But the good news is Russia could produce as many aircraft as they wanted to. It's just they don't want to produce any. That's Russia for you. The next piece of news is a warning for all of you good people of Earth. For those of you who are non-Russian, because Russians have already been warned. Russian Deputy Finance Minister Alexei Medvedev, Moiseev, not Medvedev, Alexei Moiseev, explained that foreign currency in cash is currently not a reliable way to save money. He explained that in an interview to Russia Today, RT, that little huge propaganda network that is spreading the good news and teaching the governments all over the world. So there's a possibility that in the future, Russian people will use dollar bills as paper to light up their stoves. Why? Well, foreign currency, American dollars in particular, are no good. They're not good. And that was the best explanation given by the Deputy Finance Minister. So please be warned, if you have American dollars in cash, they soon might turn into paper. Russian state suggests selling dollars and buying rubles, of course. Ruble is the best currency. Why? Well, because it's the best. That's what they say. You educated people ask too many questions. Just trust us. When we say the best, it's the best, they say. Two things I find a little odd. First, the US dollars are actually made out of plastic. Therefore, they don't burn well. You can't light up a stove with them. And the Deputy Minister of Finance, Moiseev, he should know that, among other things. And he doesn't. No, I didn't say he's inadequate for his job. You thought that, and I think you have a pretty good point. By the way, the second thing I find odd is, now, the Russians, who can produce their own planes, full cycle, with the engines, the frame and the engines, the whole shebang, why would they light up stoves with paper? The government says that soon they will be able to use dollars as lighting paper. Why would they use stoves to cook food on, to warm themselves? I mean, this is 21st century, okay? Other people, other countries who can't build their own planes without cooperation with Europe and Japan, somehow everyone has access to electricity, gas stoves, electrical stoves, and they don't use stoves to cook their meals on fire. And the Russians in the future, the government says, will be able to use their stoves with dollars. What the hell? And by the way, there will be many more news like that coming out of Russia. You see the direction where Russia is going to, right? The news will be crazy and crazier and more plentiful. And if you want to keep up with other breaking news from Russia, I suggest you consider becoming patron of Inside Russia channel. Every single day, I carefully select and post 9 news that I find important, just like the news about this American dollars turning into paper and, and things like that. So 9 news that you probably won't find, at least you won't find many of those news in the mainstream media, and I make them available to patrons of Inside Russia. So everything you wanted to know about Russia but didn't know where to ask, now you know. Consider becoming patron of Inside Russia. And if you become patron, you help the channel also as well. Thank you. The next piece of news is amusing. Russia's been kicked out of most international competitions, including the song competition called the Eurovision. It takes place once a year. All European nations come together, and each country sends its own performer, and then they compete. Not my favorite, but hey, why not? Well, Russian government, Russian rulers want to show that everything is all right in the Kingdom of Russia, and they can live fine without Eurovision. So they decided to organize their own Eurovision called the Intervision. The Intervision is the direct reference to Soviet broadcasting that was called the Intervision. When the Soviet Union broadcasted something to all Soviet bloc countries, that process was called the Eurovision. Check this out.
Внимание! Говорит и показывает Москва. Работают все центральные каналы телевидения.
I heard this music before.
Смотрите и слушайте Москву.
The fudge. Those of you who lived in Eastern Europe, do you remember this? Well, because I remember well. Every 7th of November, they translated the military parade to all the countries here, the Intervision. So they decided to replace the Eurovision with Russia's Intervision. They invited different performers from abroad and started selling tickets. But nobody bought tickets, so then they started giving tickets away. Still, no one wanted to come. Then they started paying people $100 for 2 days for just coming and sitting as the audience, fake audience. I covered it in a previous crazy news update. Remember that? So this weekend, they actually did it. The Intervision is over. It's been done. It cost Russian taxpayers around $12 million, and a gay performer from Vietnam won the contest. And that's fine by me, no problem, I don't care. Well, it's totally illegal according to Russian legislation. They made all this anti-LGBT laws, and just him being on stage was a very serious crime in Russia. Other Russian people have gone to prison for that. Oh, fortunately, the fella who won the Eurovision, Intervision, has already left Russia. Good for him. And listen to this. Russian propaganda. Pardon me. I still can't help laughing. Imagine how I was laughing when I saw that for the first time. So Russian propaganda proudly announced that 4 billion people in the world watched the Intervision live. 4 billion. Now, I don't think there are that many people in the world with access to television and the internet. The record so far is 2006 FIFA World Cup final. 1 billion people watched that football game. And now, the Intervision in Russia, 4 billion. Whoever wrote that in the news and made it published was smoking something very strong. And this is how Russian propaganda works. There are plenty of topics that no one in Russia is safe to publish. No one, literally. The blacklist topics. So if an official propaganda outlet prints something, everyone immediately starts reprinting it. And in this case, TASS, Russia's state information agency, printed that information. And everyone immediately started reprinting it. So this 4 billion people watching live news filled Russian media space immediately, just filled it up. The lie so obnoxious that many Russians started questioning and getting angry, including Russian politicians. And what did TASS do? This is what they did. They edited their original news, pretending as if they never said 4 billion were watching. On the top, that's the news, original news that I made the print screen of. It says the Intervision was watched by 4 billion viewers all over the world. And now, today, 24 hours later, they edited that news. Now it says that the Intervision was available to 4 billion viewers all over the world. Oh my gosh. This is, I don't even know how to explain. It's like they soiled their pants and they're walking around with a huge, ugly spot on their butt, and everyone points and they're like, no, that's not us. Our pants are fine. Oh, let's move forward. Like, don't pay attention to that. The country of lies in the country of liars. Can't stand them. The next news is disturbing. The Russian ambassador announced Putin's possible trip to the World Cup in the United States of America next year. Now, I want you to watch something.
To invite President Putin to come to the World Cup. Mm-hmm. Is that something that would interest your president?
Well, there are different ideas. In Alaska, or earlier probably, they talked about the possibility of hockey, ice hockey match.
Ice hockey, right.
Between U.S. and Russia, like earlier it happened before. You remember that?
Yes.
In your age, when it was a tremendous interest for everybody. And a football game, as well as I understand, is now at work.
Yes, a football tournament, yes.
I hope that in the coming context we are going to discuss that.
So it is something that President Putin would be interested in, or an ice hockey match?
Sure. Yeah.
Vladimir Putin is open to attending the World Cup in the United States of America in 2026. And the trip itself is currently being worked on. Russian ambassador to the United Kingdom, Andrei Kelin, said in the interview with a British radio station called LBC. Americans, don't do it. Just don't do it. If you do that, you'll betray Ukraine, you'll betray us, Russians living in exile, and most importantly, you'd betray your own values. Just don't do it, please. The next piece of news is, well, I don't know how to describe it right. Now, the head of the Ministry of Construction reported that Public Utilities Administration issues are being worked out in the housing and the communal sector. And the return of Soviet system of state economy regulation called Gosplan is being discussed. It's really hard to believe, but here's the proof. A long time ago, it was obvious to everyone, even for us living in the USSR in the 80s, it was obvious that Gosplan and the public administration were recognized as ineffective methods. And now, again, the monopolization of the market looms ahead. And, of course, the Russian the state-owned corporations and the government will be taking control over the industry. And that means lack of competition, deterioration in the quality of services, shortages and rising prices. And now they are reviving Gosplan. Many people said in Russia, I heard that opinion was very popular. You know what? They won't be able to go back to the USSR. That's all just talk. I mean, how close do you get to the USSR if you get another Gosplan in your country? No comments. No comments. The next news is pathetic. Russia asks to ease sanctions on aviation due to safety concerns. That has been reported by Reuters. This was reported today. A source in the Russian aviation industry told Reuters that Russian authorities are now trying to negotiate an easing of sanctions, especially regarding spare parts for aircraft, which they say are crucial for flight safety. No shit, Sherlocks. They didn't think of that when they attacked Ukraine 3.5 years ago. They weren't thinking about safety of their airplanes or the sanctions. Russia will present its arguments to regulators and other delegates in the Assembly of the International Civil Aviation Organization, which opens this coming Tuesday and runs until October 3rd. The Russian officials also state that the sanctions are contrary to international laws. They have the nerve to say that. The ICAO is obliged to take all practical measures to prevent the states from using politically biased, discriminatory and coercive measures in the field of international civil aviation. Russian officials also criticized the closure of airspace of 37 states for flights by Russian airplanes and bans on aircraft maintenance and insurance. They have the nerve to say that. Here's the Russian way for you, in case you haven't understood it at this point yet. Here's the Russian way. Attack your neighbor first, brag about sanctions are good for you, and you will be fine. Brag about how you will manufacture and maintain own aircrafts. Steal all foreign planes that are in Russia at the time. Run them down without maintenance and spare parts. Soil your pants. And then 3.5 years later, you go beg the international community, the foreign manufacturers, for spare parts, saying, oh, it's for safety. You all good people of the West, don't do it. Just don't do it. There are plenty of horses and donkeys in Russia. They can travel that way. Leave air travel to us, the educated people. The next piece of news comes from Moscow. Check this out. This is currently happening in Strogino, the western part of Moscow. The locals have been observing the scene for 2 days in a row now. There is also a very loud humming noise, as you probably can hear. Well, I don't think it's very safe. Steam under pressure, and that's a that's a tragedy waiting to happen. In the industry, the big power plants